So welcome back everybody, Paul again here, and continuing with the series I have on esoteric studies that I've done for the last 45 years. And there's a lot to put in this series, and I'm not going to try to get too complicated here. So I've decided to put a lot of small segments out, maybe 20, 23, 25 minutes or so, and let people digest them in a random order and take it in and see what they think. And my whole goal is to actually let people learn something that, if they perceive a different way, enhance their perception a little bit and open up a little bit and look at some interesting concepts from the past, and they might understand your existence in a very different way. And it's a really blissful thing to do, because it's like the human body has so much potential. The human psyche, there's geniuses who playing a great piano at their 5 years old or someone, and human nature is just absolutely stunning. And I talked a little bit about this one particular book, The Light of the Soul, which is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, in a number of my other segments. And I keep going back to that source because it's very, very ancient, and people have been practicing and using those techniques for actually for thousands of years. So it's well proven, and it's the science of the soul, the science of understanding what this body is about, what its different features are. And there's things that you may not want to do, because to harness the full majesty of the human body, there's some people who have practiced particular techniques for many, many years, and they do some extraordinary things, but maybe that's not for everyone. But the main point of all meditative practice really is just to experience the joy and beauty inside, and to continuously learn and absorb and enjoy our participation in this creation, this beautiful, fantastic existence that we're in. Now, I'm going to talk a lot about geometry, and I'm not an expert. I learned from a lot of these experts, Nassim Haramein and many others, Buckminster Fuller. There's so many people who have gone into the study of geometry, because really at the core of everything, right down to the atomic level, there's a certain kind of geometry of fundamental, not just a two-dimensional geometry, but like a three-dimensional. And I have in my hand here a tetrahedron here. It's got four sides and all equilateral triangles. This will fit perfectly inside of a sphere. It's extremely strong in its structure, and many crystals are made from this particular shape. And if you just start looking into the ancient teachings on sacred geometry, you'll find out some just amazing things. I'll show you here a few more shapes here. This one has got 10 sides. Okay, it's a 5-side figure, and it has 10 equilateral triangles. This shape is found throughout nature. It's just an amazing, and there's fundamental aspects of each of these types of shapes in terms of their strength and the kind of vibration they're subject to. So we also have here the square, cube rather. So all of these things in the esoteric understanding of physical shape, you put something physical like a pyramid or something tremendous out into the cosmos, it deforms, it affects the underlying shape. Just like at the very core of atomic structure, there's shapes and spinning shapes, and it's very, very important at the core of all planets and so on. And there's many experts, like I said, who are much better at this thing and explaining it than I am. But you take, for example, these two tetrahedrons and you stick them together. There's a number of ways that you can stick them together, and you can intertwine them in a particular way. And if you look at nature during the manufacture and assembly, you might say, of so many different cells and so on, there's a vibration, like I said in the previous segment about the cymatics. The vibration creates the shapes. So they're fundamental shapes in nature, so that when this underlying soup of energy, you might say, just this cosmic plane, is something we can't really talk about. You just kind of like theoretically conceptualize something infinite. And then you try to, you see what, you experiment with. Vibration has an effect, and vibration, a certain kind of vibration will release a certain kind of energy and will create a certain kind of shape in 3 dimension, and everything is spinning, everything is in motion. So even this shape, there's a magnet. In nature, these things might be spinning. You see, it's very, very complicated. There's mathematicians, they spend whole careers developing just some aspects of modeling this universe. But the ancients, people who practice meditation, get ourselves very quiet, receptive, you can observe in nature the principles. That's what science is. There's different kinds of observation, and I dare say that some of the ancient teachers had much better senses than we do. They might sit out and never hear a jet plane, and everything's quiet, and they just eat healthy food, and they discipline their body, and then their ears and their eyes become extremely acute, feeling and seeing things that we don't normally see. So again, it gets back to harnessing our own potential, and it starts with going within, and then we go in and we just understand not to produce. There's a time when we want to create and put our own production out there based on our understanding and the creativity, but then there's a time for absorbing and understanding the cosmic creation as it exists, because all music that we can come up with is just a tiny, tiny piece of the infinite music. And anything, any structure, any design, any technology that we can come up with, somewhere out in this infinity, there's possibilities. So a lot about understanding these esoteric things. Again, there was esoteric cosmology, astrology, the cycles, numbers, how they relate to each other. It's just incredibly vast. So what I encourage people to do is look into, like I said, sacred geometry and some of the basic math and numerology and cycles. So again, I'm going to introduce a few more books to you here. This one here, A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Boy, this book, I read it, the whole thing, a long time ago, and I've referenced it many times. It's just too much, it's too vast to really get your brain around here. But you see, when sages in the past, they would sit for long periods of time, and there's a feeling part of our consciousness that is, it's just, imagine just like a bottle with a cap on it, and the air inside the bottle is no different and is identical with the air outside the bottle. The only thing is the cap. You take the cap off, the form of the bottle is going to be there, but the cap is off now, so that the air within the bottle is now merged and connected with the air outside the bottle. So our own awareness, we put the cap on ourselves of what we conceive of ourselves, what we're taught, the social caps. The ancient teachers said, look, take those caps off and realize that you came from that infinite space. It sustains you. You're immersed in it while you live and whatever you're doing in life. And when you go, where do you think you'll go? Is there someplace else to go? Back into the infinite soup, you might say, of awareness? I know it's very difficult for people to understand that this space is an entity, that consciousness is an underlying root. But you see, let's say you say the ocean is a symbol. In the ocean there's many beings, all dependent for life on the ocean. Same way in the forest, you have soil, and soil, all the various plants depend on the soil. The soil decomposes everything and brings everything back into the minerals, back into nothing, just dust again, dirt. So that analogy, if you think of consciousness as the root, I mean, we can step up and say, okay, well, I stand up, okay, I was born here and I just came here and my body healed and grew automatically, and next thing you know, I got a PhD in physics, and I'm going to sit and say, well, I know stuff. But what do we know, really? What do we know? First, to know something, we have to train our awareness, because if we train our awareness a certain way and we feel the inside of our own being connected to the cosmos, we are not the cosmos. We can't stand up and say, I'm a cosmo, I'm a being, I'm a god, or whatever. No, it's just, there's a non-dual link in awareness, just like there's a non-dual link with all atoms in the space that exists in the atoms. So that's why the ancients say, look, I feel the cosmos, I feel the infinite, I feel my presence, I feel my connection. In that state, I don't feel an I just, it's, I is only for words. You don't feel a sense of just pleasure, just joy. You know, there's no competition anywhere. You know, in our innermost being, there's no one to challenge, there's no one to threaten, there's no one to judge. It's just your own existence. Now, again, back to this book. I sincerely, there's only one like it. It's not like a translation of some other book. I mean, it goes into basically a whole psychology and physics and how energy works. And I mean, it's such a high level that it's almost like the engineers and mathematicians of the world and the Black Project people ought to be looking at this book. I hope they don't, but there's a certain understanding that comes with this book. The only way you can understand stuff like this material is from a point of view of oneness. Where in our daily life we have to have some kind of identity. We call ourselves a name, we go about our business, and it's not a crime, it's not an ego, there's nothing bad, it's terrible, whatever. We have some kind of a temporary identity. As long as we understand, hey, we're just doing this thing here, we have a personality. But we all know when we go in our deep place and we meditate, we realize, okay, well, in my reality, maybe, you know, my daily personality is just like the skin. But my real being is just vastly, vastly more. There's so much of my being that I haven't even expressed yet that nobody could ever really know anyway. It's just I need to know my own being. If more PhD scientists and physicists and things like that did that kind of meditation, understand, look, just be a little humble. Put aside everything for a while. I mean, if we ever feel a sense of ego, pride, like, oh, I got all these degrees on my wall, or whatever reason that people have pride for, take a look, go outside, buy a little fire, look up in the sky for a while, and just watch. And you realize, look, we don't know much. We don't know. So we have to depend on. A book like this is thousands of years of accumulated knowledge passed on deliberately, carefully, in symbolic, story way, numbers way, geometry way. It's a vast universe. We know it's a vast universe. So why wouldn't descriptions of the incredible universe energy system not be big? I mean, this is just a tiny fragment. I mean, you have to kind of the only way you can understand books like that is to go into deep meditation and float in that infinite place and just kind of ride and let it take you where it takes you, because